Welcome to Talking Tech, the show all about technology. In this episode, I'm actually joined by John Stevenson, Senior Product Marketing Manager at CoreView. So welcome to the studio. I'm super pleased to have you join us. Hope you're well, and thank you for coming in.
It's a pleasure. I'm really looking forward to it.
Fantastic. So I know we've had quite a few conversations before, obviously being in the studio. We are going to go into CoreView and the product set and obviously some of the, the solutions behind it and more importantly, the problems it solves. Firstly, I would actually really like to know a little bit more about you. So firstly, how did you enter the industry? Where did you start?
Crikey, Catherine. All the sordid and the dangerous secrets are going to come out now, aren't they? So
we look forward to it.
So I went straight into a career in B2B software back in the days when computers were huge and slow and cost an enormous amount of money and didn't do a great deal. And spent several years there before really zeroing in on cyber. So mid to late 90s, probably 96, 97, saw me engaged in a particularly dangerous pastime, which was, in my capacity as technical author and writer of all collateral, because no one else would do it, I had to try and install what was then the first ever commercial version of an antivirus piece of software. It was called Dr. Solomon's Antivirus, DSAV, as it was known, on a Windows NT Server 3.51. A horrible, horrible platform. It was people listening, some of them will know this experience where you were handed 33 disks and invariably the install would fail on the 32nd after about an hour and 45 minutes of grafting away. So that was my introduction to the world of cybersecurity. Entertainingly, that product, believe it or not, it's updates. So it's antivirus signatures, the updates that are there to identify viruses in the wild. Its updates were issued on floppy disk, on the 5.25 inch one, as it was then, I think. No, maybe it had gone to 3.5 by then, actually, probably was. And they were updated by being sent out in the post, so on a weekly or monthly basis. Or if you were really pushed, then Dr. Solomon's would ring you up and read you out the signatures over the phone for, if you were in a bit of a spot.
Secure, yep.
So we've come a long way since then, certainly as far as doing installs on horrible servers is concerned. And I've been lucky. I've been really lucky, Catherine, because I've been able to work pretty well across the spectrum of cybersecurity products, all with vendors. So everything from email security through web security, through network security, so vulnerability detection and vulnerability management, that kind of thing. Working with government networks and high assurance networks, and now, of course, with the world of Microsoft. So it's been a pretty varied and an extremely interesting set of engagements.
Definitely. And it's, as we both know, the cybersecurity market or the industry, is rapidly changing even now, from technologies that were available 10 years ago. We all know that the threat landscape is changing quickly. So obviously our solutions and, products have to change. One thing I'd really like to understand, because I think there's an added layer of complexity to that, is that your experience, especially with government organisations, talk to me kind of about perhaps maybe the finer piece of kind of cybersecurity and how that's a little bit more, advanced in government organisations.
Well, here's the thing, and it's a very germane point. If you were to go back, say, to 2010, something like that, I would have been working with government and military networks. So essentially with networks that are segregated for whatever reason from other networks. So they have some kind of higher classification or category or assurance level associated with them. But of course, they do still need to talk to other networks to some limited and very controlled degree. Now, back then, most of the core assets and the Microsoft core assets, for example, server assets, would be on-premise. They would be physical computers, obviously. And the key ones, for example, something like Microsoft Active Directory, so the keys to the kingdom, the server that defines who everyone is, what they can do. In an environment like that, those machines they can be down 200 flights of metal stairs in a bunker, with under lock and key. There'll be quite possibly a separate team who are separately cleared, whose job it is to manage those servers, because the organisation understands the sensitivity and the importance of the data that they hold and that they give out. So there are very special security precautions taken over things like that. And it always makes me smile now when you look back then and you look at now, because I say to myself, well, if someone looked up to us then and said, John, that's a great idea. What we're going to do is we're going to take that Active Directory server, we're going to stick it in the cloud. Right, okay. Yeah, and it's even better than that, because what we're going to do is we're going to open it up to other applications, so that the other applications that you might not even know about are going to be able to come in and share identity information and rules and regulations and profiles and security details with that server. And then, if an even better idea than that, we're going to build a whole massive, complicated Microsoft ecosystem, all based around collaboration with sharing of data and files and passwords. We're going to build all that stuff on top of that, also in the cloud. Yeah. I nearly forgot. There's this thing called AI. We're going to let it go roaming free all over this environment that we're going to build on top of this directory server in the cloud. And it's going to go all over that server and access whatever it wants from it.
Yeah.
That argument wouldn't have held a great deal of sway back in 2010. And yet, that's exactly where we are today.
Exactly.
Because where we are today is that Microsoft 365, and I'll say a few words in a moment about precisely what that is and why this is so relevant. But Microsoft 365 is exactly that. It's Active Directory on steroids in the cloud with an entire ecosystem sitting on top of it. And as such, I think you can really only conclude that there's no real comparable security challenge to the challenge that we all face in dealing with Microsoft 365.
And it affects so many people. Again, I know we're going to go into this in a little bit more detail, but it affects so many IT teams, doesn't it? In the way that obviously they're managing it and backing up and everything else. So I'm really interested to kind of go into that a little bit more detail. So how did you end up at CoreView? And I think I know the answer to this. Obviously, you're very passionate about kind of the technology, and I think it also helps that you believe in a particular solution when you're talking about it, when you're explaining it, and when you're speaking to customers and so on. But I think for me, it's having something that stands out, that people obviously have a need, not just a requirement. It's an actual need to use the solution. So what did attract you so much to CoreView?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of work with network security and enjoying it. It's very technical. I'm a techie by background, even though my job's got the word marketing in it, and I spend a lot of time waving my arms around and words come out of my mouth. But I'm a techie by background, and I still love to tinker if given half a chance. So in the network security world was a wonderful world, but I hadn't done anything with Microsoft. I suppose in some ways I came to the world of Microsoft and the world of security thinking those two words don't necessarily sit together terribly comfortably. Spoke to my team members, as they are now, spoke to CoreView, and was immediately taken by the fact that they had a real clear view of why it was important that people looked at their Microsoft 365 tenant. And it's, well, I hesitate to use the word security, more resilience than security. Now, and I'll explain that nuance in a moment. But before I do that, it's probably worth us thinking for a moment, what is a Microsoft 365 tenant?
Yeah.
And it's the digital workplace for the organization.
Yeah.
Put simply, I mean, there are better definitions than that. There are more detailed technical definitions than that.
Yeah.
But it's the digital workplace for the organization. And for some, it's their entire digital workplace. I mean, for others, they have maybe specialist networks if they manufacture things, or if they're in finance and they have to exchange financial data with other financial companies, they have other systems. But it is a large part of virtually every organization's digital workplace. And for many, it's their entire digital workplace. And the challenge is it was always designed around the idea of collaboration.
Yeah.
It's 55 interconnected services and applications in the cloud, all designed to enable people to share stuff, but never architected from the ground up for security. And that creates some very, very special challenges when it comes to the issue of resilience.
Yeah.
We are all, you'll be the same as me. We all get, oh yeah, Microsoft, yeah, we pay them some money every month and they give us a copy of Word in the cloud. You know, I paraphrase, but you get the idea. In a way, that's what we've been accustomed to believe, because many of us are kind of almost grown up with Microsoft as an application. So we all kind of, you know, see it as this thing. Yeah, you give them some money and they fix vulnerabilities and they patch it for us and they try and keep our antivirus up to date. And the money seems to go up all the time and it's really expensive actually. But anyway, they take care of it all for us.
Yeah.
Look closely at that scenario and it's not true. It really isn't true. The tenant itself, the tenant has to be resilient to attack. It's under attack all the time now. Being resilient means being able to prevent, to withstand, to respond, to recover, and to learn from attempts to compromise the tenant, or indeed successful compromises of the tenant. Yeah. That's what being resilient means. And because of the way Microsoft's been designed and architected and come to be as this collaborative platform, it's lacking in on the resilience front in certain key areas. And they're very important ones that all organisations really need to deal with.
And I think it's definitely, you know, as you mentioned, it's something that is always overlooked, and I know this quite a lot, that, you know, IT teams or, you know, security teams tend to bury their head in the sand and think that it is being done when in actual fact it's not. So we're going to go into a little bit more detail in terms of, obviously, the Microsoft 365 tenants and who it would be applicable for. I'm just going to ask two things before we quickly move on, because, again, I'd love to understand, obviously, you, the person behind CoreView. I'm going to give you 2 bits of paper and I would love to understand. You've heard of Room 101. We put things in the bin. It doesn't have to be anything to do with the industry, but I would love to understand from you what 2 things you would actually like to put in the bin. So I'm going to quickly give you 2 bits of paper and a pen. Anything at all. But yeah, I would love to understand what things that you would actually like to get rid of.
It's a long list, you know. It really is.
I wasn't sure if it would still be something from the industry, but
I mean, you know,
we've had some great things.
Yeah, I'm going to start with something from the world of technology.
Yep.
And I'm just going to show my age here, as if it wasn't already apparent to anyone watching this, but it is going to be the word influencer, I'm afraid. I'm sorry to say. It's not a word I feel any positivity towards that I can summon in any way, shape or form, even at the mildest of levels. So influencers, I'm afraid.
No, go for it. Yeah.
Is that okay?
I have seen now actually on a lot of forms, you know, when you're filling in like an application, let's say like it's a, I don't know, bank loan form or mortgage form, you know, something, and it has influencer listed as so it's a big thing now. I get that.
It is, yeah. And I mean, no, I don't.
Here we are, we're both sat here.
I don't. Are
we on the borderline?
I don't actually have any interaction with, but I'm pretty sure my wife, you know, certainly on the cooking and fashion front, probably has an influencer or 2 that she keeps an eye on, I would think. So yeah, there we go.
So maybe she might not agree with you on that one, but
I need to sit down and have a serious talk, don't I? The second one is seasonal, or should I say almost seasonal, because it is cranberry sauce, which is, you know, frankly, the work.
I thought you were going to say Christmas then when you said seasonal. I thought Christmas.
Yeah, cranberry sauce. It has to be. It's the work of the dark arts, is it not? Let's be honest. It should never be allowed in.
Do you know what? I agree with that one as well, because I'm not a big lover of. And people, this is going to be an unpopular decision here, isn't it? But I'm a big fan of, if you have dinner, you have dinner, and you have pudding, you have pudding. I don't like mixing the 2 together. So when people put cranberry sauce or apple sauce or any of these other little bits, that's just, again, my personal opinion. But I'm with you on the cranberry sauce front.
I'm a bit of a broad church on the other stuff, but cranberry's just a bridge too far for me. Sorry.
What about, see, if you had a BAP and you had like pulled pork and apple sauce?
No. No. Actually, I think that's borderline. dark arts as well. Sorry.
We'd definitely stick with the cranberry sauce rather than anything else.
Yeah.
So I know that completely sort of went off outside of CoreView or the tech industry, but we are here to talk about obviously CoreView today. But I think that the thing for me is obviously we wanted to talk about the multiple problems for organisations and Microsoft tenants. Obviously you've done a little bit of explanation as to what it is, but could you give us an analogy in terms of, Microsoft tenants and perhaps maybe something a little bit easier for people to understand what actually it is and the problems that people face?
Yeah, so I think there are three key areas that we see organisations realising that they really have to address, and I'll take each one in turn.
Yeah.
So the first one is with this tenant, these 55 interconnected applications and services designed around collaboration that sit in the cloud that form your digital workspace. Because they were all each individually came to life, if you will, there's no single cohesive central way to see if anyone has made a change to any of the configuration of your tenants. Now, if you think about what the words configuration of your tenant means, what does it mean? Well, it could be somebody tinkering with your Exchange mailboxes. It could be somebody changing the policy that is pushed out to every single device in the corporation. So every iPhone, every Android phone, every laptop, every desktop, it has a policy, a security policy that's pushed out by the tenant. Mm-hmm. Someone makes a change to that. You've no way of knowing they've done it. There is no visibility for any of those configuration changes. I chose Exchange mailboxes and device compliance policies, but I could have equally chosen something like changes to the security of SharePoint, for example. All these things are configuration settings. Yeah, none of them are given full, easy visibility to an admin or a security professional via Microsoft 365 itself. And of course, those intent on doing harm know that that's not visible, that there's no visibility there. So they know, for example, if they've managed to get in, if they've managed to steal Catherine's identity and get in, however briefly before they get bounced out, they could quite easily, if Catherine is the sort that has some power, some administrative privilege, go and make a change to the Microsoft 365 configuration to let themselves back in afterwards. It's as simple as that.
And you mentioned a figure, didn't you? You said about sort of 10,000. That's a huge amount.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the configuration settings, it is. I'll move on to what the significance of that is in a moment. But what I do want to just focus on is the fact that there's no visibility of if this tampering has taken place. And you can see that in some of the stats that are out there on a regular basis. Of all people, Microsoft themselves actually are quite happy to illustrate the lack of visibility that comes with their otherwise very wonderful product, because they've done work. I think it was last year. No, I think it was either late 24 or early 25. In 1 month, 174,000 instances of configuration tampering that they discovered. And all the AV guys, all the cybersecurity endpoint guys, the Sophoses and the like, they will all point to configuration tampering as a major, major problem, because obviously it enables people to effectively operate under the radar inside the tenant.
Gosh, it is phenomenal. Configuration
tampering is a big deal, and it's part of a whole lack of visibility story. So that's the first thing. Mm-hmm. The second big issue is one that I'd really like it if everybody who watches us today thinks about this after this session's over with, is they almost certainly, all of them, back up their data. I mean, why wouldn't they? Come on, Catherine, do you back up your data?
Of course I do.
I do. I back up my data. Of course I do. The guys in the studio, they back up their data. We all back up our data. We've all learnt the lessons over the years about how horrible it is when you don't. Yeah. So the organisations out there who are using Microsoft 365, they're either paying Microsoft to do that for them, or they're paying a third-party vendor, and there are plenty of them around to do that for them, and they're all getting their data backed up. No one is backing up the tenant configuration. Nobody. We did a survey. It was called The State of Microsoft 365 Security. You can download a copy from our website, and I sincerely recommend you do. But one of the questions we asked was, who do you think's backing up your tenant configuration? 49% of people who responded to that survey said Microsoft does that for us. No, they don't.
Yep.
Yeah. And the thing is, a Microsoft tenant configuration, 225 different types, over 10,000 individual settings. If you spent man-years worth of effort securing your tenant to its optimum operational and security basis, so its security posture is spot on, and no one's backing it up, what happens if something goes horribly wrong? I mean, here's an analogy. Yes, it's a glass of water, I know. Here's an analogy. So your data, your 365 data is the water. Your tenant is the thing that holds it, contains it. Your tenant configuration is the thing that contains it, yeah? Fair enough. I'm not going to do this, but if I threw this on the floor, you'd lose the water, so you'd lose the data.
Yeah.
But you've got a backup of that, so you're all right there, aren't you? If I throw it on the floor really hard and smash the glass into smithereens, where are you going to put your water? Where's the data going to go? Yeah. And it's a serious problem. I'll give you a little insight from a conversation I had with some guys working with the Australian government. And they said, it's a legal requirement in Australia that something called the Essential 8. It's a government mandate. And with the Essential 8, what you have to do is prove that you're conforming to these 8 principles if you work in the public sector. And one of those is having proper backups at all times. And the guys in the public sector in Australia who figured out that Microsoft isn't backing their tenant configuration up, that if they get compromised, they'll have to start from ground zero, that it could take them man-weeks to rebuild their tenant. Those that have figured this out, do you know how they solve the problem?
No.
They use Excel and a copy of Microsoft Paint to take screen captures of all the pages, of all the configuration settings, of all the tenants, and paste them into Excel with little notes in the cells beside them saying what the configuration means.
So if you're doing that right now, stop it.
Stop. Listen up. So backup and configuration of the tenant is a crucial issue, and one which most people don't even realise they need to deal with. So configuration's being tampered with. The need for a backup, and the other thing that people are, very aware of is the fact that, in general, Microsoft 365 admin privileges grant way too much power on a broad roles-based basis to admins. And I'll give you a simple example, and then I'll give you an analogy to really bring it to life. So if you are the SharePoint administrator for a large corporation, the chances are that you can go to the manufacturing plant somewhere in, I don't know, South America, say, and make changes to the SharePoint there. But because you're also the SharePoint administrator, you can probably go to the finance SharePoint site in Zurich and make changes there. Most large corporations do not want admins having that breadth of privilege. It's too great a risk on 2 fronts. 1, they might accidentally break something. And 2, if they get compromised, then there's a whole world of pain can be inflicted across the board. But Microsoft, for all its many roles, SharePoint administrator, Exchange administrator, this administrator, they're all broad-based. They don't enable you to really segment up what an admin can do. And therefore, they give you a really broad attack surface. And these 3 issues are issues that people come and talk to CoreView about, issues that we see out there every day. Configurations being tampered with, an inability to back up your configuration so that you can recover and restore it, and people having way, way too much privilege. And those are kind of the issues on the table right now. On that last point, on the way too much privilege, a bit like my glass of water analogy, here's the analogy. If you live in an apartment, apartment living's jolly good. I really like it. I've done it myself many times. If you live in an apartment, there's a front door, a main door, but you have your own door too, don't you, to your area, And you don't generally expect that someone can mooch in the front door and decide they're going to come in your kitchen and have a cup of tea and then go and have a sleep in your bed. You preclude them from those areas. Yeah. Unfortunately, Microsoft administrative privileges and the way they're assigned on a roles basis means that people can mooch across the length and breadth of the tenant, having a cup of tea wherever they want and sleeping in whichever bed they decide they'd like to. And that's a problem. That's a big problem in terms of the attack surface of the tenant.
It's a security risk in itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I love the way that obviously you've spoken about those analogies and the way that you've given us some really good examples. You also mentioned a couple of statistics as well. You mentioned obviously like 49% of all responders in a particular Microsoft survey. I've got a couple of other stats here that you've obviously given me, which I think really brings it home in terms of the landscape of the security threats for people managing their tenants. So I'm going to explain a couple of these here, but what I'd also like to know is a particular report that obviously relates to. So configuration drift is rated as the number one cloud security threat in the half one of 2025, as quoted by Cybersecurity HQ. And again, I think it's quite nice as well that there's so many different reports as well. It's not just by Microsoft or it's not just by CoreView. 176,000 instances of configuration tampering during 1 month, again quoted by Microsoft. 79% increase in configuration tampering of Defender across a 2-year period. Again, you mentioned obviously Sophos. T-1562 impaired offences was ranked the number one MITRE attack technique used by attackers. So again, I think what's also important is we mentioned the attack landscape and also some of the threats that are coming on. They're broader, they're wider than anything before. So it makes it very important. And just 2 more here. Ransomware is 40% more effective when Entra is misconfigured, again by Microsoft. And device compromise increases by 70% when Intune is misconfigured. So again, it really kind of brings back that, that piece around configuration, the importance, the backup and everything so on. So before we quickly go into CoreView as well, you mentioned the state of Microsoft security report and where 49% of responders. So we will include obviously a link to that below, as well as the MITRE report and some of the other really, really important reports. If anybody looks after their current configuration, I would highly recommend having a look at obviously the sample report as well. It's really, really important. But now that we kind of understand the problem is, the problems, the challenges, everything that people are having to deal with, obviously Paint and, Excel spreadsheets, what does CoreView do? And how important is that to somebody who's managing their Microsoft tenant? Sure. So
CoreView's been around for 2014. It was originally formed. HQ in Italy, and on the technical side, HQ in Washington on the commercial side. What CoreView essentially does is number one, it's a dedicated Microsoft 365 vendor, so software vendor. That Microsoft is all we focus on. Yeah, and what we do is we provide a product which wraps around the tenant and deals with, at its broadest level, two key areas. One is tenant resilience, so the resilience I mentioned earlier on, resilience to attack, and also tenant complexity. We find ourselves talking regularly to customers who'll turn around and say, we've got 8 Microsoft tenants because we're an acquisitive company. We've bought other companies, and we've grown and we've diversified. I'm sat here and I'm expected to manage them all and make sure that they're all attain the same level of security resilience and they all maintain the same standardized configuration that complies with the compliance requirements in my sector and blah, 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 blah. And I'm overrun. I'm completely overwhelmed. Yeah. So the 2 areas of focus are tenant resilience and complex tenant management, essentially. So what we do is we provide solutions which enable organizations to ensure that their tenant is hardened to the appropriate security benchmark level and stays that way. You wouldn't buy a server or a laptop, hand it over to somebody and say, oh, here you are, use it. If you want to put a password on, that's all right, but you don't have to. If you want to make sure the firewall's working, well, I don't know, deal with it in 3 months' time when we have your review. You wouldn't do that. You would harden the piece of physical kit before you deployed it. A tenant should be no different. Unfortunately, it is. So we help organisations to harden their tenant, to make it resilient. We provide the ability for them to tell if their configurations are being tampered with, or even if they just drifted. If some set of guys have come along one after another because they've had to make a quick change in order to help someone do something for the business, and over time this configuration, which started out pristine and good and secure and strong, has gradually, it's drifted, and it's no longer aligned with the kinds of base benchmarks and baselines that it should be. So we help organisations to see that and manage it, especially important if they've got multiple tenants to manage.
Absolutely.
We enable them to back it up and restore it, so that if the worst happens, either if they get done or if there's just a catastrophic error. And people do make catastrophic errors, mainly because, as we just mentioned, they've got too much privilege. So they accidentally press button A instead of button B, and all of a sudden, all their identity infrastructure has disappeared.
Yeah.
So we help them to detect tampering, to deal with configuration backup and restore, and we remove privilege from the administrative model, so that we take away the kinds of broad-based privilege that are there by default in the Microsoft world. So we're able to say, for example, that John can only be responsible for the management of SharePoint sites in the South American plant, a part of the company, and he's not allowed to grant external users or guests access to being part of those SharePoint sites. Catherine, on the other hand, is allowed to manage only the finance SharePoint sites in Zurich, and she's only allowed to do these tasks, not broad roles, specific tasks on that SharePoint site in that area. So we segment the tenant so that you can remove privilege, so that you can reduce the attack surface. And that's what CoreView does. Our customers include one of the world's biggest tenants. I probably can't say who it is, but it's in the UK. And these are all large or small organisations looking to make their tenant more resilient, and looking for help in managing the complexity that comes with it.
Fantastic. And that was going to be my next question is, who is it relevant to? Is it small organisations, large? But it sounds like obviously it's across the board, public, private sector. Yeah. Okay.
Public and private. And probably our smallest customers would be a couple of hundred users. Where maybe the users are very important, powerful finance types in working in investment banking, who are used to being able to do exactly what they want whenever they want it, but somebody has to make sure that they don't do something utterly dumb. And CoreView provides the ability to manage that process and help to keep them safe. So that would be at one end of the spectrum. At the other end of the spectrum would be the largest public sector organisations. And those are organisations that will typically have many tenants, many stakeholders, often be in a state of flux and change, looking to cut costs, have admin teams that are totally and utterly overwhelmed by the scale of the job in front of them. Just simple things like onboarding a new member of staff. That's a massive amount of work to do manually at the moment in integration with an HR system, ServiceNow, manual tasks to set up mailboxes, access to SharePoint, blah, 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 blah. Just a huge number of laborious manual tasks, and CoreView automates those processes and takes that grief away.
Fantastic. And one, there's multiple key takeaways from this particular episode and from CoreView, but I think the one thing here, what is the one thing that you would recommend that the audience go away, go do? You know what I'm getting to here.
I am going to go back to the guys in Australia with the spreadsheet and Microsoft Paint. When you finish listening to this session today, the one thing you should definitely do is just go back when you're next in the office or you're next on a Teams call or a Zoom call, and just say to the rest of the guys, what are we doing to back up the tenant configuration? Who's backing it up? Do we know whether it is backed up or not? Because I think it will be a question worth asking, and you might just be surprised at the answer.
Exactly. And like you said, so many people presume that alternate sources are backing up the data. But again, ask the question, try and explain, what do we do in that scenario? But yeah, definitely the key takeaway.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I wanted to basically talk about quickly was we always look at each one of the technology companies, and I think it's fair to say most of them have at some point got, best place to work or, top 100 places to work. It seems to be becoming very, very popular at the moment. But the thing that I was actually quite impressed by CoreView was the sheer amount of like press releases, awards, mentions, surveys, all sorts of things that kind of surrounded it. One that I was particularly drawn to was the Kupinger Cole's recognition of CoreView's unique capabilities and outstanding depth. So I think that, again, when you're looking at independent resources or independent reports, when they're referencing CoreView, that was one of the things that stood out for me. But also, there's a couple of other mentions here as well. Articles in Security Insider, IT Management Today, SecTank Report and Gartner. We know, obviously, again, how prestigious Gartner is and obviously, to feature in them. But the other thing that I also mentioned or that I saw was that CoreView is mentioned in multiple partner studies. So Crayon, Planet IT, Soft Choice, and also some of the awards you've won as well, which again, not just best obviously places, but it's things like the Microsoft Partner Pledge. So obviously they see the value in CoreView, Inc. 5000, CRN, Emerging Vendors, and so many others. So for me, CoreView is one that stands out, particularly because it's not just you talking about it and saying, look, this is great tech. It's other independent, sources who are saying this. So again, I don't know if there are any other kind of resources that you've kind of seen CoreView in, but
I think you've probably covered the key ones. Obviously, as far as we're concerned, particularly in a marketing function, is you're looking at Gartner, IDC, Microsoft themselves, Kupinger Cole. They've all been very, very nice about CoreView. In terms of the partner dimension, partners like CoreView, and the reason partners like CoreView is because what CoreView does is it enables them to engage with a business and basically build a relationship over time. So starting with basically let's do some kind of a health check on just how healthy your tenant is, building up into taking some actions around resilience maybe, or around rationalizing their spend on licensing, on management, and then looking at their configuration and backup strategy. So it gives the partner an opportunity to work with the prospect or the customer over time and build a good relationship. The only other thing I'd add to that is I'm never one for these best places in the world to work things, really.
Yeah.
but I can't help in passing note that one of the wonderful things about having a head office in Milan is you do get to eat extremely well. And for my sins, I quite like that.
Yeah, that sounds good. So do you get to go to the head office much? Or?
Not as much as I would like, but I'm hopeful for 2026.
So noted, CoreView, can he go to head office more often, please? So, I mean, I think the thing that is really, really important at the moment, obviously, we've mentioned people that look after, obviously, the tenants. So if you are anybody that looks after Microsoft 365 tenant, or you work in the team where they do manage it, definitely go back and ask that question about, obviously, backups and the important part. I have included below the episode guides to the total tenant takeover and access to the free tenant scanner. I don't know if you want to just really quickly, before we wrap up, explain what that free tenant scanner does and how beneficial it is, really. Yeah,
I mean, we've got a range of free tools, and essentially a number of them are essentially they're Microsoft script-based tools. Some of them are more checklist tools, but they're there. In essence, they're there to give somebody a reasonably rapid picture of the state of their tenant from the point of view of its security and its potential exposure. Yeah. So for instance, there are tools that will tell you how many SharePoint sites you've got that haven't been touched for over 3 months. Because, well, why would you bother having a SharePoint site out there that could be being exploited for some reason if it hasn't been touched for 3 months? There are tools that will tell you how many mailboxes there are that have got auto forwarding set up. There are tools that will tell you, and the overall tenant scanner tools will amalgamate all of this into a summarized but pretty actionable report, which you can use in order to determine what kind of security posture your tenant has and how resilient your tenant is to attack.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. That definitely sounds something like you should check out. So that leaves me to say thank you so much for coming in the studio. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved learning about CoreView and obviously all its USPs and definitely how it can help multiple people within IT teams. So thank you very much for listening. Let's take a look at the episode as soon as it drops and hopefully speak to you soon.
Thank you.